Everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm a book-loving, notebook-hoarding reader and writer on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. And this is the Get Literate podcast. Each week, we mix together books, notebooks, mindful practices, and creativity to cultivate a life we love. You can expect regular weekly episodes focused on 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme, and we'll bring those themes to life in our actual lives too. You can also expect author interviews, notebooking inspiration, and topics to help us grow through what we go through. Now, let's grab a notebook and your TBR list and let's get literate. Hey everyone, Stephanie here, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Literate podcast. Today we're talking about our reading lives, and specifically why we choose to be readers. I mean, we all have limited time in our lives and a lot to do. So once we get everything that we have to get done, what makes us choose reading as a personal, pleasurable, relaxing activity over all of the other things that we could choose, like watching TV, binging Netflix, gardening, crafting, running, not my thing, maybe yours, going out with friends, all of the other things that we could do. And maybe you do all of those things and you find time to read. But the simple fact is, if you are here and you are listening, then you want reading and writing to be a strong part of your life for whatever reason. And I want to ask you why. Why do you choose to read? Is it because of the health benefits, those physical, mental, cognitive, and emotional benefits I talked about way back in my bibliotherapy episode? Is it to escape reality? To learn something new? Is it because you just feel like you're a nerd and you like to just geek out on all things reading and writing like me? Does it bring back some really great childhood memories? Are you quiet or shy and reserved and enjoy more introspective activities rather than those outgoing social ones? Maybe you want to meet some new fictional friends. Maybe you want to travel through the pages of the book. Why do you read? Maybe it's one thing. Maybe it's 2 things. Maybe it's more. Here's why I read. And I'll tell you, I've thought a lot about this. I made a list. And when I looked at the list, I noticed that there was one theme that ran through all of the reasons that I pick up a book. I read to grow. That's it, right there. I read to grow. Yes, I read to escape. Yes, I read to meet new fictional friends. Yes, I read to learn. And yes, I read to connect with others. But basically, it all boils down to my growth as a human, as a person. I read to grow. I read because there are certain things that I can only experience through the pages of the book. I'll never be able to experience them in real life, whether that's because of who I am and where I live and the situation I've been born into, or what my future looks like and the possibilities that it has. So if I don't read, then I'm going to have a more narrow understanding of the world. And narrow understanding, narrow thinking is not something I want. And it's certainly something that the world does not need more of today. We need people who seek to understand, who are curious about how the world works, and who want to be changed by what they learn. And for me, that change happens best when I encounter it in the pages of a book. Now, that kind of change can only happen if 2 things are present. Number 1, readers who choose to read widely and purposefully with an open heart and an open mind. And number 2, people who are brave enough and willing enough to tell their stories on the page, both real stories and fictionalized. Today, I am sharing 3 books that didn't just help me grow, they made me say something out loud as I turned the pages. Are you ready for this? I said on more than one occasion throughout all three of these books today, what the HE double hockey sticks? I'm keeping it PG for all of the moms and people who are listening with little people around. But I honestly kept saying throughout these books, what the heck? Why didn't I know about this? Why wasn't I taught this? How could I not see this? Why is the world like this? These are all questions I'm privileged enough to ask as a result of reading a book and not actually living my life. And I know that. I get that. Books are the only way that I can really experience a life that's outside of my own to better understand. And this is where I really geek out on the idea of science and mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are the neurons in our brain that fire up when we see someone else experience something. Right? So when someone else is experiencing something, whether that's good or bad or otherwise, if we watch it, if we witness it, there are certain neurons in our brain that fire that allow us to feel it and experience it as if it were happening to us. Now, not completely, obviously, but enough. The great thing is that these mirror neurons fire when we're reading books too. So not just if we see a situation happen to our friend that tugs at our heartstrings, but if we read about that situation where a fictionalized friend goes through a challenge and it tugs at our heartstrings, we feel it. Our brain is changed. Our brain is changed. I read to grow because reading can literally change our brain. These mirror neurons are everything. Through these mirror neurons, we can develop empathy. We can gain access to new perspectives that we never ever could in real life. And that means we can open ourselves up. We can think differently. We can act differently. We can do differently. So anyway, I could geek out on the science of mirror neurons and the relation to reading for a really long time, but we're not here for that today. Today we are talking about what the HE double hockey sticks books can change our lives, right? I'm going to share three, but I also have some titles from members of my Patreon community that have shared their what the heck books too. So first up, the first book I want to share, and really, this book made me question a lot. I said what the heck and some variations of it multiple times throughout this book. It is the book, I would say, hands down, number one, has really made me question my history books, has really made me question my teachers, has really made me question what I thought I knew, like what the heck. So in this book, we meet Regina Pettit. She is a fifth grader who just moved across the country to Los Angeles with her family as part of the federal Indian relocation program in the 1950s. So it is a middle grade historical fiction book. Now we follow her as she adjusts to her new location, to a new way of living, a new culture, a new food, all of the things, a new school, new friends. And as she adjusts to all of this newness in a positive way, she also unfortunately has to adjust to a lot of new prejudice that she didn't experience before on her reservation, and a lot of microaggressions. And I'd actually just add macroaggressions too. And so as part of this journey, this young girl is asking, who is she? Is she Indian? Is she American? Is she going to be okay? Right? I literally had to set the book down a couple of times as I was reading it to just think, what would it have been like to have been this fifth grader whose life has just literally gotten flipped upside down? It made me think about the actions of the federal government at that time. It made me think of the horrible challenges this group of people were forced to go through. They couldn't even choose their own last name. Their families were ripped apart. Their friendships were ripped apart. Their culture that they valued so deeply was being shattered. It was a heartbreaking story to get through. It was personal and compelling. The narrative was just so completely absorbing. You are in this book. And the learning, well, the learning was completely shocking, at least for me. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I could bemoan that fact and think, how did I not know this? I'm a woman in my 40s. Come on, get with it. You know, the world doesn't work kindly for everybody. But I was still shocked. I really was shocked at what I learned. And I think that everybody needs to read this book, whether you are a middle grader, if you are a young adult, and especially if you are adult, because it will force you to look at the world and the people in it and the experiences that they've had at the hands of others in a completely new way. This is why I read. I read to grow. I read to get uncomfortable. And I read so that my mind is a little bit bigger than it was before, and that maybe my actions will be a little bit bigger as a result too. So Indian No More is an incredibly powerful read that I think everyone should add to their TBR stack. Now, the next book is yet another what the heck kind of book. This book is brand spanking new. It just came out a couple of days ago. I had the privilege of reading an early version of it, and it's called The Lost Year, a survival story of the Ukrainian famine by Catherine Marsh. Now, people, buckle up for this book. Okay, a few weeks back on the podcast, you heard me talk with Terry Brown, who was the author of Sunflowers Beneath the Snow. That was a story of multiple generations of women in Soviet Ukraine. I couldn't help but continue to make connections to that book as I read this one. But this one really hit home for me because it wasn't just a series of connected stories across generations. It was a series of connected stories across generations who were children. And that, my friends, makes this even more heart-wrenching and gut-punching. So this book, it tells the story of multiple generations of young girls, cousins, who are trying to survive Soviet Ukraine during the terrible famine of the 1930s. It does weave back and forth between characters, between generations, between locations, and all of this is threaded together by 13-year-old Matthew in the present. Now, Matthew is here in our current day, stuck inside his home because of a COVID lockdown with his mother and his great-grandmother. His dad, unfortunately, got stuck overseas as a reporter and can't come home. He's dealing with missing his dad. He's dealing with being a kid living in a quarantine. And he's also dealing with the change in the fact that his great-grandmother came to live with them instead of staying in the nursing home she was at so that she was more protected and safer during COVID. So the setup is he ends up doing something that makes him lose his video game privileges, and his mother asks him to help sort the boxes in his great-grandmother's room because she has just moved in as a way to get away from the TV and into the connection of others that are in the home. Now, this changes everything, right? He's not all that keen on doing it, and quite frankly, neither is the great-grandmother. But he ends up finding inside one of the boxes a black and white photo of 3 little girls that sets him on this curious fact-finding journey with his great-grandmother as she opens up to him and tells him her story from so long ago. And what a story it is. It's a story of horrible deprivation, but it's an even more frightening story of the government's role behind it. This story is gripping. It is incredibly emotional, and it is incredibly frustrating as you see from the outside how beliefs are formed, how people think the way they think, how people ignore certain things that they see, or how people challenge certain things that they see, and what people do with the information that they are presented with. It's a doozy. And the thing is, it's based on the author's actual family history, and that makes it even more compelling and even more powerful. As I said, it's brand new. It's a new release, and it is a must read. You will sit there and think, oh my gosh, how did they survive? What the heck is happening? How is this going on? And what are we still doing today? Right? It's a book that's going to make you think. Now, I've got one more really powerful book. We are going through all sorts of emotions today. This book is also fairly new, and it's called Thirst by Varsha Bajaj. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've been practicing. This book is a catalyst. Okay, this book is a catalyst for learning, for growing, for changing, for opening our eyes to the reality of what life looks like for others in other parts of the world, from where I currently live, and the situations that I am privileged to be a part of. And in this book, we meet Minnie. Minnie is a 12-year-old girl who lives in the poorest part of India, where water is incredibly scarce, and her family must go to great lengths to access it. And the thing is, this could happen right now, right? Where I am in the United States, clean flowing water in my pipes and in my shower, I take that for granted, but not everyone can. This book reminds us of that. Now, things are so bad that people are going to drastic lengths to get the water that they need or they think they deserve. And when Minnie and her brother witnessed the mafia literally stealing water from the people, their lives changed completely and instantly. Her brother is sent away to stay with family for his safety. Unfortunately, her mother takes ill, and since she needs to step up and help, she ends up taking her mother's place, cleaning and cooking for a more wealthy family, while still attempting to maintain her schoolwork. It's hard. Physically, it's hard. Emotionally, it's hard. And when she's at this more wealthy family's house, she sees that, unlike her own home, water flows freely there, easily. Things are different. And she also ends up finding that the very mafia that she saw stealing the water happens to live inside that home. So she's got a big decision. Does she risk her job and maybe her life to speak out and share what she knows? Throughout this whole entire process, Minnie learns the power of family, the power of friendship, the power of community, and how small acts of courage can change everything. Now, what did I learn? I learned how much I take for granted so much in my life. First, clean, flowing water. And then you can't help but think of the effects that domino after that. It's a powerful book. Now, I'm guessing by now you have noticed a pattern. All three of these books that I'm sharing are middle grade and young adult novels. Why is that? Well, I read Kid Lit like it's my job because it is. I am a literacy teacher educator, and I read children's literature so I can better connect teachers and students to literature that they will love and help them build a reading life too. But there is something so powerful about reading books as an adult that give us a child's perspective. Things just seem to hit closer to home for me. It speaks to my own inner child. It reaches emotions that only a child could, and a child's experiences. And it just makes it much more powerful for me to really think that it's not just adults who are experiencing this, but children. Children. For me, that's the game changer. And so I tend to read a lot of children's literature, and I am moved by a lot of children's literature. Now, yes, I can read very provocative adult literature, and I can ask questions like, what the heck's going on? What the heck happened? Wow, why is this? But it's really the books that are from a kid's perspectives that make me say, what the HE double hockey sticks is going on, and why didn't I know this? It just is for me. Those are the books that truly can move me and my perspective, and then make me realize the kind of power and privilege I have, which means maybe I can help do something about it. So those are the three books I'm sharing. But what's next? You know, I like to end these bookish episodes with a recommendation that you can take forward into your own reading life to hopefully impact your actual life too. Those were my 3 books that I've shared. But before I give you your challenge for the week, I do want to share some other titles that those in my Patreon community said were what the HE double hockey sticks books that made them think. So let me just list through them for you. I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. When Thoughts and Prayers Aren't Enough, a school shooting survivor's guide into the realities of gun violence by Taylor S. Schumann. A Woman is No Man by Itat Rum. So Far from the Sea, a picture book by Eve Bunting. The Kite Runner by Khalid Hosseini. Educated by Tara Westover. The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. American Dirt by Janine Cummins. And one of my favorite authors, All American Boys by Jason Reynolds. There are so many books that can move us to grow. The 3 that I've chosen today just happen to be the 3 most recent that have been on my radar that I've needed to speak to others about. But now it's your turn. Here's how I want you to move forward, thinking about how this matters to your actual life. I want you to make a list of the identities that you hold. Grab a piece of paper, grab your favorite writing utensil, and just make a list. Mine might say, I'm a woman, I'm white, I'm a mom, I'm an educator, I'm a New Yorker, upstate New Yorker, not the city. I'm a reader, I'm a wife, I'm a coffee lover, etc. Chances are, I read books and you read books that consciously or unconsciously support those identities. We read what we are. We tend to read what we are. But now I want you to make a second list. I want you to make a list of identities that you do not hold, that are not true for you. Mine might say I'm male, a father, a husband, a fisherman, right? A businessman. Maybe I struggle with communication, or I love to, what do men love to do? I love to fish. I love to watch sports, right? The idea is to just make a list of whatever is not true for you. So you might look at your list of identities and do the opposite, or you just might think a little bit and think, what are the things that you'll never be able to experience or likely won't experience because of who you are and the identities that you have? Then I want you to choose one of those identities that you do not hold. Just choose one, doesn't matter which one. I want you to choose one and I want you to read into it, not lean into it. I want you to read into it purposefully. Go to Google, go to Goodreads, go to your librarian, go to your bookseller and say, I want a book about this. Or I want a book where the main protagonist is like this. I want a book where I can learn about this situation. That's it. Read that book. A book that will be unlike you, that'll open your mind just a little bit to something new. It's a book that will help you to grow. And then you start there, and then maybe another, and another after that. Now, remember, your reading life and my reading life doesn't always have to be about growing into a bigger, better version of ourselves. I love a good rom-com and a good Lifetime movie, just like the rest of us. We can still learn lessons from those books. But by purposefully adding in books to your reading life that are unlike you and what you unconsciously know and lean into, it'll change you. It'll change your mind. It'll change the way your brain thinks. It'll change your actions. And collectively, it could lead to bigger change as well. That's why I read. I read to grow. And I hope that you'll consider choosing a book in the next couple of weeks that will help you to do the same. But I want to know about the books that are on your mind. When you think about your what the HE double hockey sticks books, what the heck just happened? Why didn't I know this? What is going on? This is boggling my mind and just staring me in the face and I can't ignore it. Why? What are the books that do that for you? I would love to read them. I need them. You need them, I need them, we need them, and together we can start sharing some books that will help us grow into bigger versions of our reading lives and our actual lives too. So you can find me on all the platforms at Affinito Lit. Go ahead and snap a picture of a book you think I need to read and tag me. I'll look at it and I'll add it to my own stories or retweet it so that others can find it too. Or if you prefer, you can head to the show notes at alitlife.com and go ahead and leave your book recommendations in the comments. I log all of the books I read in my own personal book journal, where I have a heart rating instead of a star rating. And I would really love to know the titles that touched your heart and set your mind on fire. So I can't wait to find out what they are. And in the meantime, I hope you go make that list of identities that are true and are not true and read into one of them and see what happens. Thanks for listening and happy reading, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to join my Patreon community. There, you'll find additional inspiration for your reading and writing lives, like bonus podcast episodes, book calendars, monthly book clubs, notebooking challenges, live events, giveaways, and much more. It's only $5 a month, and you get instant access to all the previous content too. You can learn more at getliterate.co. But one more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish and notebookish community too. Thanks so much for listening.